Georgia is looking to Mississippi to help children learn to read. Yes, Mississippi. You heard that right. This is Behind the Investigation with Atlanta News First Investigates. I'm Sierra Cummings. I've got investigative reporter Andy Parati here. Andy, this is a part of your series, Reading Reset.
Yeah, this is part 7 of our ongoing series involving Georgia's literacy crisis, where 70% of fourth graders in this state cannot read proficiently. But when I heard that a state that I never expected to hear as being near the top in literacy came to mind as a potential solution, we decided to take a drive.
Chapter the 9th, Big Fight. Then you're not. Here I come!
Cameron Davis reads with the enthusiasm of an action hero.
It's our only chance to save the kid! Run! The name of the book is Dogman, A Tale of Two Kitties.
A Mississippi third grader with a love for reading that started at an early age.
Once you get the hang of it, you got the hang of it.
But it takes work.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of work. I'll hunt you down till my last breath.
Cameron's reading proficiency highlights a state experiencing literary success.
Little Petey, are you okay?
That feels like a miracle.
Don't worry, he can be repaired.
According to the National Assessment of Educational Progress, the nation's report card, Mississippi once ranked almost dead last, 49th in 2013, for its fourth grade reading scores. Today, it ranks 9th best in the nation, and it leads the country #1 for overall reading improvement.
This is called a positivity pulse.
Amanda Malone is the state's literacy director. How did Mississippi do it?
A lot of times people call it the Mississippi Miracle. Now, miracle implies that humans had nothing to do with that, and so it's not a miracle.
So don't call it a miracle.
Don't call it the Mississippi Miracle. It is really a marathon.
That marathon started in 2013 when state lawmakers passed sweeping legislation, which includes funding literacy coaches to help teachers in the classroom, retraining teachers in science-based reading instruction, and passing a law requiring third graders must read at grade level before they're promoted to the fourth grade. Why third grade? It's the year students move from learning to read to decoding words and reading to learn.
What's another word for beginning?
Shamika Harris is a teacher at Shirley Elementary in Jackson, Mississippi.
B.
At first, she wasn't a fan of holding third graders back if they weren't reading on grade level.
Sometimes students, they have a bad day. Maybe they just didn't do well on that test, but that doesn't mean that that he or she doesn't know the material. But now I feel like, okay, we know about the test, prepare, start at pre-K, and make sure the students are getting everything that they need to ensure their success for the third grade assessment.
Georgia schools are in the process of replicating many of Mississippi's initiatives to combat a literacy crisis. 70% of fourth graders in the Peach State cannot read proficiently, but districts are not required to hold third graders back if they're not reading on grade level. According to a Georgia Department of Education spokesperson, districts can waive this requirement as part of their charter system or strategic waiver contracts. This means the majority of districts set their own policy regarding promotion retention.
So before we start,
Malone says the intent of Mississippi's law is focused on intervention, not retention.
at the third grade level, it's the time. It is the time to determine, all right, is this child reading on grade level for the purpose of them being ready for college, being ready for a career. That's one of our goals here in Mississippi, to make sure that whatever those children do, that we have prepared them to be able to do it well. It's a big deal. It is really a big deal.
Despite its success, Mississippi still faces a perception problem after decades of dismal testing scores. Here's what candidates for New Jersey governor said during an October debate.
We need to do what Mississippi and Louisiana did, high-impact curriculum.
Interesting how he keeps citing places like Louisiana and Mississippi, I think some of the worst schools in the entire nation.
When you hear that, what goes to your mind?
Well, first of all, it's wrong. That's not accurate information.
Today, Mississippi's graduation rates are higher than the national average.
Peel.
And testing assessments show there is no better state in the country for low-income or students of color to learn to read, proving that struggling states like Georgia, improvement is possible.
It makes me so proud, and it really brings tears to my eyes because, again, literacy is a human right. It is for everyone.
ADHD, don't fail me now.
Cameron agrees.
I think that is awesome sauce.
Awesome sauce. Makes you proud?
Really proud.
You know, Mississippi used to be the one that we could always make an assumption about. Well, not anymore. Don't call it a miracle. It's a marathon, and we're still on it.
Georgia is among 37 states that have asked Mississippi for guidance on how to turn its reading scores around. If you're thinking Mississippi's success is because it lowered the bar, think again. Over the past few years, it has elevated its expectations and reading proficiency requirements. Andy Parati, Atlanta News First, investigates.
Andy, this story is so important because so often in our reporting, when we're looking for solutions, we might just mention something. You took the time to actually go to that state and see firsthand. Walk me through setting up this opportunity. Did you get any pushback from the literacy director? How open were they to all of this?
Well, I'll have to say that the reason why I thought about going to Mississippi is because I heard about that moment in the story that you saw where the candidates for governor in New Jersey were talking about literacy, and the Republican candidate was sort of saying, hey, we need to be just like Mississippi. And even I was like,
Mississippi?
He's talking about Mississippi. And then his challenger, who ultimately won that election, was like, no, Mississippi is one of the worst. So I did some digging, found out the Republican challenger was right, that Mississippi has been really just seeing leaps and bounds in progress when it comes to literacy. So I reached out to the Mississippi Department of Education and I said, hey, I would love to profile your success. And oftentimes school districts, schools of education, systems of education, when an investigative reporter reaches out to them, they're usually like, whoa,
A little hesitant,
what's this
yeah.
story about? But I was, very transparent. I said, here's the data that I'm looking at. I just want to simply better understand how you got here. I've been doing this series here in Georgia called Reading Reset, talking about its struggles, and I would love to see if there's something that I can report to show what Georgia could potentially learn. Well, it turns out I wasn't the only one that has been reaching out to Mississippi over the past couple of years. At least 38 states have been reaching out to Mississippi for guidance on this exact issue, Georgia being one of them.
You have that really great moment in this story where she's like, don't call it a miracle. This is a marathon. So, as she is pointing out here, it took some time to see this improvement, a little more than a decade. So any indication of how long it'll take Georgia?
Yeah, they do not like calling it a miracle. In fact, in journalists, we love alliteration, right? Mississippi's miracle. But I knew reading ahead before doing that interview that I knew that they did not like it being called a miracle because it sort of neglects the fact that it took a decade for, in their case, to see the progress that they're making. And as the story showed, it really started with some bold legislative moves of funding a lot of this stuff and adding literacy coaches to the classroom. So what Georgia is now doing is what Mississippi did about 10, 13 years ago. Georgia passed some legislation, some transformative legislation the past 2 sessions. Some of that legislation compelled by our reporting over the past 2 years. So, when you ask people here in Georgia, the Georgia Literacy Council, school superintendents, they believe that they're going to be at the top. That's what they claim. But the issue is, whether the public has that sort of patience, because it did not take overnight in Mississippi, and it's certainly not going to take overnight here in Georgia.
You just mentioned the Literacy Council superintendent. Who's actually tracking the impact of these changes here in Georgia?
Yeah, so the Georgia Council on Literacy, essentially the state legislature had to pass a law to create this body. It includes superintendents, the Georgia Board of Education, all these other entities that are stakeholders in trying to get our children to learn and read better. And so they meet a couple times a year. They provide some progress to that group. They say, here's what's been done. Here's how we're following the law. There's some mandates that the Georgia legislature passed in its legislation over the past couple of sessions, one being that all teachers be retaught to learn and teaching reading and something called the science of reading, evidence-based curriculum, and also to make sure that the materials that teachers and the students are using are what considered high quality, science-based, evidence-based stuff. So there's some mandates that are happening right now. It's not all districts are sort of meeting that mandate yet, or at least not reporting that they're meeting it yet, but it's something that we're going to be following for some time, because it's hard to, I think in the education world, when you hear 70% of fourth graders cannot read proficiently. They've been, living and breathing this thing. So it doesn't come as a shock to them when you interview them. But, when I started researching it, not being someone that covers education exclusively, I was like, whoa. And when I tell this to people that don't cover education or that are not in education, they also say, holy cow. So I knew when I started looking into it and I saw those sobering statistics, I knew it was something that we needed to shine a bright light on.
Wow, it sounds like some crucial milestones are ahead. Great reporting. Thanks so much. Andy Parati, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Behind the Investigation with Atlanta News First Investigates. For more on this story, go to atlantanewsfirst.com and click on the A&F Investigates tab. You can listen to more award-winning investigations wherever you get your podcast by searching Behind the Investigation with Atlanta News First. And tune in Sundays for an hour-long episode of Uncovered, where we highlight some of our biggest investigations that impact our communities.